All right, and we are live. Hello, Miss Casie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm really excited to have you on this podcast and listen to your story.
I'm excited to be here.
So, why don't you just go into a little bit of detail, because this is your apartment, because I have no power still.
Welcome to my home.
Yeah. So why don't you go into a little bit of detail, kind of start a little bit about yourself. Why don't you talk about like how we know each other, kind of like the basics, just take it in any direction you want to go in.
Okay, cool. So my name is Casie Wiedinger. We know each other. We actually just recently met. This is a new friendship. Because you know my boyfriend Tyler.
I do.
And Plug, he was on your episode a few episodes ago.
He did come on. He's probably going to come on again in the near future once he gets his music career up and going. I think that'd be cool to kind of have him on and discuss that and what his plans are for that.
Yeah, it would be cool. He's got a lot to talk about. But yeah, he introduced us because you guys used to work together. And now you guys are both on the same entrepreneurial path. And yeah, that's how we met.
So I'm really excited to get into your backstory here. Mm-hmm. So why don't you start off and talk a little bit about kind of your journey, kind of talking about like the body dysmorphia stuff that we talked about before. I'm really excited to hear about that. So why don't you just take that away and talk about maybe how you first became, I guess, aware of the body dysmorphia that you were a victim of and how you got to the point you are today.
Yeah, so I can I'll just kind of start from like maybe where I kind of noticed things changing in my life. Because body dysmorphia, I think, has always been a part of my life. If we think back, I don't know, if I think back to where I first noticed signs, like as early as like 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
But I guess I can talk about that a little bit after. But really, my journey and what I'm on is like a health, wellness, nutrition kind of path. So that's what I'm really passionate about. I have always been an athlete. I've been in sports my entire life. So I've always been pretty fit. When it comes to like body shape and the way I look, I've always been very self-aware, I think, from a young age. I always noticed that I looked very different from the rest of my family.
I think that's like so tough when you get into that when you're very young, because I was personally, when I was a kid, I was a very overweight kid. Mm-hmm. And even like to this day, even though like I know in the back of my mind, like, Josh, you're not overweight compared to some of the people in this country. Mm-hmm. I always have that thought. It's like, maybe you're like gaining too much weight, but it's like, no, that's not how it is. And it's very hard to kind of like pull yourself back and just, I guess, look at it more objectively. And I mean, it's always going to be a little subjective, I feel like, but yeah, it's
I think
tough.
Too, like when you take into context too, right? Like growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, what the perfect body was in that time was very different from what I looked like, but also I was a kid, right? So I was very self-aware of what I looked like and what other people looked like, and I was comparing. My mind was always going, and so I was constantly noticing what I didn't have or what I did have and what I looked like, and it drove a lot of insecurities and a lot of different mental health issues. But I guess I'll just start with I was always, I always had body issues. I was always overweight. As a kid, I was always chubbier. I have a million cousins, right? My mom was always really skinny. She was 90 pounds soaking wet her whole life. Wow. Even when she got pregnant with me at 29. And
she was 90 pounds when she was pregnant with you, like I'm like 9 months pregnant, like about to pop.
She put on a lot of weight, but it brought her to she put on like probably 50 pounds when she got pregnant with me.
God, that's
which
still
brought her
not
to
that
like
much.
a normal.
Oh my God, that's insane.
But I would look at my mom, right? And she had like this really skinny, like killer body that was like exactly what was like perfect, right? And my cousins all looked like that too. And so I was always more of an athlete. Mm-hmm. I had thighs and I had a butt and I had just a wider figure.
What sports did you play?
I did it all, right? My big sports when I was older in high school were soccer and lacrosse. Mm-hmm. Those I was really passionate about. But as a kid, I did martial arts, gymnastics, dance, baseball, swim.
Wow, you did everything.
Everything, yeah. I loved it. My dad's a big sports guy, and we were a very big sports family. My brother's like very talented. He's a very good athlete. I wasn't like the best athlete, but I loved it, and I'm very competitive. So it like drove me to work really hard.
Where'd you go to high school?
North Providence High School.
Gotcha. Do you know Marcel Petaway and Matt Holt? Do those names sound right? Yeah, I used to play basketball with them a long time ago.
Me
back
and
in
Matt
the day.
Holt went to Sunday school together.
Did you? That's cute.
We made our confirmation together.
Oh wow, that's adorable.
Very holy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in DC now, I think. I haven't talked to him in years, but I see him on Facebook every now and then. He posts some stuff. I think he's a writer or something.
Oh, cool. He was always a really great person.
Yeah, he was always really nice. I haven't talked to him in I couldn't even tell you how long.
Yeah,
But anyway,
same.
Continue.
But anyway, yeah, so I don't know. I used to notice these things, about myself. And I mean, I used to have fits a lot where my parents, would try to point it out. And both my parents were really skinny. So I think they did the best they could to try to communicate where they felt like I was chubby or like gaining weight. They tried to do it, I think, in the most sensitive way they felt they could. But as a kid, it always felt like an attack because I was so hypersensitive to it. But I would just notice things. One of my earliest memories when I was 7 or 8, I was jumping on a bed with my cousins who were the same age. We were all in the same like muscle shirt. And I remember looking at us jump in the mirror. And as we were jumping, it like an overwhelming pain sort of came over, knowing that they were skinny and their shirt was loose and I was busting out of my shirt. And that it was so hard for me to like comprehend that and understand how different it was. And it felt so awful. It felt like I always felt like I was ugly and that I wasn't beautiful in any way. And I think too that probably had a lot to do with just TV and seeing different things in magazines as a kid.
I think social media has really ruined that in this day and age.
Yes.
Because how many people are you going to see like eat a large pizza and then take their shirt off and post a picture? Not too many. Like almost none.
Never.
If there's any out there.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't do it.
I'm very fortunate that I didn't grow up then. I think it would have been far more catastrophic for me mentally. So I really empathize for all my younger cousins today because I can't imagine that pressure comparing yourselves to what the beauty standard is, because it crushed me as a kid, you know. But no, I can't even do that now. I have to really earn that pizza.
Yeah.
I have to really put in work. But yeah, I don't know. So it started then where I'd call my mom crying, like, you have to take me home. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I hate myself. If my mom ever pointed stuff out, I would say, like, it's sad to admit, but almost like suicidal things, where I'd be like, I'm so fat, I'm gonna throw myself down this flight of stairs. Like, like I was very like not okay at such a young age with it. It was like very painful. But yeah, so I noticed it was always a thing. Middle school came and I was bullied a lot for it, which in comparison to, I just think the obesity I see around the country now, I wasn't that bad. But having a doctor constantly tell you, like, you're 20 pounds overweight for a 10-year-old, or that, those things, like they weighed heavy.
They add up over time.
Yeah. And then you get to middle school, right? And that's already like such a weird, awkward time in like anyone's life. Yeah. And I was bullied a lot. But I didn't have many friends. Going from middle school to high school, I did have a core group of friends where I started having self-confidence. And then I got to high school and I remember, I look back and I was very normal. Like I wasn't skinny, but I wasn't really chubby. I was just like a normal kid. But I remember there were girls who would ask my boyfriend, why are you dating Casie? She's so fat. And I would hear these things. And those are things that just, they stuck. And then there were a lot of, that's when social media started coming out when I was in high school. And a lot of those anonymous web pages where you could write questions.
Oh, what was it? Like Formspring, I think it was called. Something like that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was annihilated on there.
Oh my God,
I had some brutal things said to me, like things I you don't forget. Right. But like I said, I wasn't someone who could brush things off. Like I was very sensitive, and I'm a very like emotionally in tune person. So it was like a knife, and everything would sort of add up. And so high school was really hard. And then I was already an athlete. I was already working out, but then I had this obsession with the gym that started like my sophomore year, and I started going to the gym a lot, which I guess now it's pretty normal, but back then I didn't really see a lot of kids my age at the gym. Right. And I was doing like insane amounts of cardio, and then my junior year I was the skinniest I'd ever been. Really? At that point in my overall in my life, right? So I felt really, really good. I started getting a little bit more attention. People were kinder to me, which is crazy now to see the treatment you get when you look different ways. Like I know that now. But then I'll say it was really great then. But then my senior year, I started putting on this weight and I hadn't changed my lifestyle in any way. So I started noticing that. And obviously that started feeding into like the insecurities that were under the surface. I was still playing soccer. I was playing lacrosse. So I'm running like 5 miles a day. Right. Right. And I was getting to the end of my senior year and I'd put on a lot of weight, and I knew because in lacrosse practice, when they hand out the uniforms at the beginning of the season, they only have so many small sizes, right? And so being a small is like something you felt like you were great when you got that small skirt. And I finally had gotten one the year before, right? So then my senior year, they call me up and I'm like, oh, I'm a senior. You get the seniority. So they always say, don't take all the smalls if you're not a small, because then the freshmen aren't going to fit. They're going to get an extra large. Be aware. I went for the small, and I had a coach in front of 50 people call me out and say, I think you could go with the medium or large, Casie, don't you? And that's when I was like, shit.
Wow.
I guess I'm, something's happening. So I definitely started noticing it like spring of my senior year of high school. And then I lost some friends that summer, and that was pretty hard, which is like pretty normal, transitional. Right. But I'd say from the end of senior year until the beginning of my freshman year of college, probably within a 6-month span, I'd put on 50 pounds.
Wow.
And I didn't know why. Like, of course you go into college, and there's new food, right?
Right, so freshman 15. Now we have the COVID-19, so it's like the same thing.
Yeah. But like freshman 15 isn't freshman 50.
Right.
So I was very like, alarms were going off in my head, like something's wrong with me. But then there were other things happening with me. Of course, I wasn't running 5 miles a day anymore, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that, but I was going to the gym. I had good friends I was going to the gym with. I was eating more French fries than normal and Chinese, but I was putting on this weight in a way where I look back at pictures and I could tell like I wasn't unhealthy.
Right.
Like something was wrong. Mm-hmm. Because it was a very even bloated look all over.
Right.
But I kept putting on weight. But then on top of that, I noticed different things. Like I was losing a lot of hair. I couldn't control like my body temperature. So like I'd be really, really, really cold when it didn't make sense, or like sweating hot, and I like couldn't get warm if I was cold.
Like, are we talking about really cold in like the summer and really warm in like wintertime? Like that type of thing? Like outside, even, like sweating?
Yeah,
type thing?
But like even in the winter, like I couldn't get warm and I was heavier. So like that doesn't even like make sense for my body. Also too, I started becoming extremely depressed, like extremely suicidal, where I had like suicidal plans.
Right.
And it got to that point where it was like I was going to the doctor. Mm-hmm. I was telling people something's wrong with me. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm putting on a lot of weight. I can't stop it. And I'm putting on more and more. And I want to kill myself. And I can't stop the thoughts. And like on Christmas, I had my entire family downstairs, and I was like questioning like if I should go and kill myself. And I had a whole plan on how I was going to do it upstairs for my family. So I knew something was wrong because I knew that wasn't me. But it was uncontrollable, and it was just like getting worse. And
doctors weren't helping with any of this?
No. So I was going to my physician, a couple other doctors. And at that point, like I was telling my mom, I'm like, something's seriously wrong. She knew something was wrong. I lived at home for college. Mm-hmm. I went to the local Rhode Island college. So it's not like I was away. Like they saw my habits. And the doctors were telling me nothing was wrong. They ran tests. They were like, some numbers are a little skewed, but like nothing to be nervous about, nothing that we need to look into.
Right.
So at that point, it like escalated my depression and anxiety, because no one was validating me in any way.
Right.
So then I definitely started emotionally eating, but I definitely didn't have a healthy relationship with food either.
Right.
From high school to college. And I think at that point, it just got far worse. Like, when I tell you I could eat an entire thing of Chinese and a pint of Ben & Jerry's just for dinner, like that's like your calories for like 3 days.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But like I was like really eating, and like it was emotional. Like I wasn't going out really partying. Like I was staying home, binging Netflix, and like eating until I thought I was going to throw up, but then still eating.
Right.
So it was very unhealthy. And that went on for a while. And that was really until my mom was talking to our chiropractor, which is like, this is so crazy, but she was talking to our chiropractor and she's like, I don't know what to do about Casie anymore. Like, it's really bad. And he had a history working in labs. So he was like, I'm going to pull up her lab results and I'm going to see what I can find.
Right.
He looked into it, and the number that was skewed, he was telling my mom, okay, she has either 1 or 2 autoimmune diseases. He gave me a recommendation to a thyroid specialist. I went, and within 10 minutes he diagnosed me with Hashimoto's disease, which was one of the autoimmune diseases that my chiropractor suggested. Mm-hmm. Which is crazy that it was my chiropractor of all people, but that's who found it.
And what is that?
So Hashimoto's disease is an autoimmune disease. So it, to put in layman's terms, means that I have a hypoactive thyroid, which means it's underactive.
Gotcha.
And basically the way it was explained to me was that a normal healthy person produces probably 50 or 60 antibodies, and those antibodies go and they attack the bad foreign objects that come into your body, any illnesses, whatever.
Gotcha.
When they tested my levels, I was producing 2,500 antibodies.
Wow.
So, which is really wild. And the antibodies, essentially, there were so many that they were attacking my thyroid. So my thyroid wasn't able to produce the thyroid hormone that regulates our body. So my thyroid just wasn't active at all. And so you don't really realize how much your thyroid controls.
Yeah.
But it controlled all the symptoms that I had. So it controls the portion of your brain that controls your depression. I am blanking on the name.
Amygdala?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I did not go to nursing school and take biology to not remember that. But anyways, so yeah, it controls that portion of your brain. It controls your body temperature, hair loss, weight gain, all of that. And so that, at that point, right, it was like hallelujah, because I finally thought I knew what was wrong. But that was probably toward the end of my freshman year of college, which was 2015.
So you're like 19 at this point?
Yeah. I just had I was 18, 19. So I was like 18 when I was diagnosed, 19 when I finally got put on a synthetic hormone. So it's called Synthroid. It's basically like someone in a lab just produced the hormone that my body's just not making.
Right.
But it was a really slow process because they start you on like let's say like 10 micrograms, right? And I'm on 125 now. So it was like
it takes a while.
Yeah. To really figure out like what your body needs. And so it was a really long process. And through that time, it was just like a really like rough time. It was like exciting because I knew what was wrong. But then, and I started taking it and I thought like everything was going to get better. And it didn't. And it took a long time for a lot of those symptoms that I had noticed to really like dissipate. But at that point, that really sparked like, what is it now? Like a 6-year journey of, you know, weight loss. So then after that, I was like, okay, now I know what's wrong. Now I'm going to be on top of this and I'm going to start figuring out how to lose weight, more than just working out. So then I went into all these crazy diets. And a lot of them I was just starving myself and like they really weren't healthy.
Right.
And that was a process, right, of like losing like I did Herbalife, which this isn't to like shit on it, because I'm sure like people do great with it. But knowing what I know now, like it really just wasn't healthy for me. Like I was taking in 90 calories for breakfast, 90 calories for lunch, and like a salad for dinner.
Right.
And I was essentially starving myself and I didn't know it. And I would lose like 20 pounds in a month. And I remember being like, oh my God, and having, you know, progress pictures to post on Facebook. And then you get that instant validation, right? So you're like, oh my God, I'm killing it. I just lost all this weight, but I have no energy. And then the following month, I'm putting on 30 pounds because I'm starving myself. My body's in starvation mode, right? So what people don't realize is when they don't eat and they're eating at this large deficit, when they start to eat, their body holds on to that fat because it thinks it's starving,
right? And
you start gaining weight. So it's like counterproductive. And I would do that, and it was just like the cycle of back and forth, like gaining, losing, which I'm sure put a lot of stress on my body,
right? And
wasn't good for it. So my body was just like all over the place. My energy was all over the place. My mental health at that point, I think, really got worse for like the next year and a half. Like I really wasn't in a good place. Like I'm really not a big drinker. If you watched the podcast with Tyler, like he says I'm a grandma, like I really am. I've never been interested, like even at 21, I don't know. I've never
had the desire.
No, like I have my moments, right? When it's summer and I'm like, oh, I want to go to brunch with my girlfriends.
Yeah.
And I want a mimosa.
Of course.
But no, for the most part, like I really don't drink, like maybe holidays, but that's it. But at that point, like I started drinking a lot and like blacking out. And there were like a lot of like bad times in that portion of my life because I really hated myself. Like, I had no concept of self-love.
Yeah.
I would really try to like tell myself like all the great things about myself, like all the characteristics I had that were great things and were positive, but I was just overcome with like so much hate and like disgust for myself and my body, and I was really associating self-love with how I looked on the outside and not my soul.
Right.
And I was putting my body through, I'm sure my cortisol levels were terrible because my body was probably under so much stress for all the diets I was doing, all the bad habits I had, and all the crappy food I was eating. And then I was drinking, and then I had pretty toxic friends at that point who I thought were really supportive friends who were like, oh, take this for anxiety. And then I was blacking out, and I was driving home, and like, it was a really scary portion of my life. And I don't think it was until January of 2017 that I woke up one day and I was like, I'm tired of hating myself. I'm tired of looking in the mirror and crying and being disgusted. I'm just going to love myself. And I don't know what it was. It's like, just, some people really do have those moments where it's just like, I know I'm going to change. Right. And I really did. And I just decided I'm going to love myself. And that was also the year that my medication, I think, finally started to work. And in that year, from January until probably like the summer, I'd lost like 30 pounds. So instantly, like, and it was gradual. So it was a very healthy weight loss. You know, I just started eating healthier too. Like, I was done with the diets. I just started eating healthier. I was working out. I made changes in my personal life too. I was going to college. I like dropped my major that I thought it was like my dream job my entire life. And I started doing things that I was like, this is just for me and like what I'm passionate about and what I actually care about. And I just started making all these little changes in my day to day that like overall changed my whole outlook on life. And I started just like meeting new people. I did a study abroad because I changed my major. So I lived in London for a summer.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh my God, it was sick. Yeah.
I had an ex-girlfriend that studied abroad in Australia. Awesome. She like had nothing but good things to say about it, and I wish I had done it myself.
Yeah. It honestly really just like, it just changes you as a person. Like we were saying before the podcast started, traveling alone just like teaches you who you really are, because you're just presented with all these obstacles, and like also being okay with like being alone and figuring things out for yourself and enjoying an environment without somebody to be like, oh, isn't this cool?
Yeah.
But it really opened my eyes, and I was in a class with like 13 other people, and I was just like forced to like make friends with people who I would have never like handpicked for myself. And I don't know, I just like really grew. I had been single for a few years too. I was very just like alone. And when I came back, I just had all this confidence, and I really like, for the first time in my life, I think at that point I had just turned 21, and I like could genuinely say like, oh, I love myself. Right. And then I met Tyler in the fall, and now it's gonna be 4 years since then. Wow. And he's just like helped my weight loss journey more, because he's, when I've plateaued, he's like taught me new things, and so he's definitely been a huge contributor. But at the point that I met him, I had probably lost like 35 pounds. Then we started dating, and I put on some weight because he was drinking a lot, and McDonald's was really fun, like after you drink, right? And then I was like, we looked at each other, and he had gained a lot of weight at one portion of his life too. Right. And we looked at each other, and we were like, oh my God, like we can't be those people. And we just started our like workout journey together.
Now, how many different doctors did you go see initially?
Probably like 2 or 3.
Now, I feel like the problem with doctors, and obviously they go through very extensive schooling. Like, not everyone can be a doctor. Like, I'm not going to go into an office and just start calling shots and telling people things. But I feel like a lot of doctors are really good with medicine. They're like, okay, you have ADHD, you need this. You have this problem. Not problem, but you have this that's affecting you. You need this. I don't feel like doctors are overly qualified. And this might be a little ignorant of me to say, but I don't feel like they're overly qualified from not only a mental health standpoint, but also a health standpoint. Because how many doctors do you see that are overweight?
I totally agree.
Like, I think
they also don't really, they're not going to push like what I think is a healthy approach either. They're going to push you toward medicine. That was my experience. It was also like a very discouraging experience too. Like at that point, I think when I was in high school and I started feeling like anxiety and depression, which like is very common for high schoolers, I think. I mean, I don't want to speak on every high schooler and just generalize it, but I started feeling those things in high school, not to the severity that I did when I had all my symptoms. But I started going to counseling and everything because there were things going on like in my family life that were changing, and it was like confusing, and I felt depressed or anxiety. So I started going to counseling, and like instead of teaching me at 15 or 16 how to cope with my emotions in a healthy way, they put me on medication. And then the same thing, like when I had all these issues, like it was pushing me on medication. Also, I had doctors telling me too that like when I first saw the weight loss, they were like, oh, that's not because the medicine's working. Like it's like you, like and I should preface that with, they told me that the 60-pound weight gain that I had was not because of my thyroid. It was because of my lifestyle. So they were telling me like I essentially was overweight and fat because I was just being unhealthy, even though I was telling them what I was doing.
That's an issue, and that's why I don't know if I would go to a doctor to ask how I can lose weight, because they don't give you, it doesn't seem like, at least in my experience, they've given you like a tangible way to measure it. It's like eat better. Okay, what does that mean? Like, just eat apples, just eat a salad, and that's it for the day. Like they don't teach you about like calories. They don't teach you about how to break things down.
No.
They don't teach you that it's supposed to be a long, gradual process.
Yeah, as with anything, right? Mental health or physical health, like it's not something that you can just pop a pill and take overnight and you're better.
Right.
But that's what the doctors were doing to me.
Right.
And it really took years later and like so much like turmoil mentally to figure out that like, okay, no, like I have to do this. Like I don't, like it's work and it's a lifestyle change.
Right.
And even with like the anxiety pills I was taking, that also probably contributed to how I was feeling when all this was happening with my body, because I started experiencing withdrawal and I didn't even know. Like I started passing out like at work at Rhode Island College, and like everything was spinning, and I didn't know until a nursing student told me, oh my God, we just learned about that medication in our nursing class today. They used to use that as a tranquilizer back in, the 50s. And I was like, okay. So I took myself off that. So like I took myself off of all medications. My doctors also didn't tell me what to do with Hashimoto's. So I was 18 when I was diagnosed. Most women do not get diagnosed with Hashimoto's until they're middle age, like 40s, 50s, 60s.
So how did you end up getting diagnosed so early? Just because you just got lucky, or?
I just was having all this. I was having these crazy symptoms where I knew something was wrong, and I went out to get help.
Right.
I think a lot of women have these symptoms and they don't do anything about it, because I talk to a lot of women who are like, oh, like this is happening with my weight and I'm doing this, this, and this. And if they're telling me the truth, I'm like, okay, well, if you're saying that you're doing what you're doing, then you need to go and inquire with your doctor, because it could be a thyroid problem. It could be this problem, but you have to go check it out. And a lot of people don't look into it because I think they just think that like, oh, it's me, or
they're afraid.
Yeah. And they don't want to look into it. I kind of was just like crying for help. I'm like, please, someone just help me, because I don't want to live like this.
Right.
And I mean, I'm 5 feet tall.
Right.
Like on my health records is obesity. I got up to 182 pounds.
Wow.
That's a lot on a 5-foot girl.
Yeah.
Like I can only imagine if I didn't get off that road, like where that could have led me, because diabetes runs in my family. High cholesterol runs in my family. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't make a huge lifestyle change, but no one really directed me down a road of a lifestyle change. Like that's something I had to figure out for myself.
Right. And I think that's a problem I see in a lot of people. Like a lot of people don't look for the why. Like the days I'm like not feeling great, the days I'm feeling down, I'm like, okay, why do I feel like this? Why is this a problem? And people don't look for the why. I feel like a lot of times people nowadays, they just throw their hands in the air and they're just like, forget it, it's just me.
Yeah, and
like,
they
I'm
just
a
like
mistake.
pull up in Facebook.
Yeah.
And they feel good when they get a like on a picture. So like that subsides any of the pain for a little bit.
Yeah, that is the dumbest thing. Like, that's probably the worst thing you can do. Like, that's like mixing liquors. Like, essentially.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's hard work, right? First of all, it takes a lot to be self-aware of those emotions and like call yourself out and say like, why do I feel like crap, or why am I feeling like this? But then to actually like do something about it,
right.
like taking action is really like the hardest thing ever.
Yeah,
you know?
I definitely agree with that. And I also think it just comes down to people being lazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like this goes back to kind of the way we're brought up in society. Like, we are taught things, and these things we are taught are going to help us for the rest of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people understand. It's like, no, if you really want to understand something, you have to actually go research it, and you actually have to put in some work, and you actually have to go do it.
You have to implement it in your day to day and make it a habit.
That's the thing. I was listening to one of Rogan's podcasts the other day, and there are so many people out there that read self-development books, like tons. Like, I could name dozens of people off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people probably implement them? Not dozens. I can tell you that much.
No, and I'll tell you, like, it's hard, right? Like, I live with my boyfriend Tyler, who is like, I feel like he's the poster child for implementing all of those self-help things and having great habits. And it's hard for me because I look at him and I'm like, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
But doing it and being consistent with it is so difficult. Like, we don't argue ever, but when we do, it's because I'm failing at being consistent and I'm going through an emotional period and I'm like, I don't know why. And he's like, Casie, I know why. Because you're not doing it every single day.
Right.
So how can you expect to do it for a week and feel better? You have to do it every single day. And it's hard because mentally it's like there's something in there that stops you from doing it, even though it's going to make you feel better.
Right.
Which is crazy.
What were some of the habits that maybe you're trying to implement now, or that you tried in the past that you had some trouble with?
Eating healthy, and I guess knowing what I was eating, or like knowing what was right for my body.
Right.
Working out, but enjoying working out. Because that's huge too.
Yeah.
And you go through ebbs and flows with that as well.
Right.
You know, I think too, it's all about like what you surround your whole life with. So I think I just had like a lot of different friendships that were toxic. I have amazing parents, but like we just like don't do well living in a house together. Like we are best friends when we don't live together, but when we live together, it's like cutthroat. Like That's so funny. It wasn't like a healthy it wasn't healthy living together either. We brought out like the worst in each other when we lived together, but outside of that, we bring out the best in each other, right? So like my home environment wasn't healthy, and like I wasn't really like understanding like food is a science, and people don't really get that, or they do, and they're like, oh, so it's so hard, so I don't even want to do the work of it. But understanding like what your body needs personally, because every body needs something different. Yeah. And then paying attention to your food, understanding your food, cooking your own food. It's so easy to eat out all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's a bad habit that was hard to cut. Like I would eat Chinese like multiple times a week, where I had the contact saved in my phone, and they'd pick up and they'd be like, hi Casie, you want the General Tso combo again with the egg roll? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, please. I think those habits, and then I don't know, and being consistent with it, right? So like I feel like I changed like my whole lifestyle of like just different habits, and sleeping was a huge thing too. Like my sleeping schedule was like not great for so long. With college too, it's like probably never perfect, but even out of college, like fixing that. Yeah, I think cutting out anything that was toxic, which is so hard to do because it's hard to admit that certain things are toxic, because they're either addicting or you love them, whether that's people or activities or foods or drinks or anything. You know?
Right. I feel like high school kids should be educated about what will happen to them once they leave high school, because unless you're like an athlete, which is definitely not the majority of people leaving high school, then your activity factor is going to take a very large hit. And not just your activity factor, but your structure is going to take a big hit too.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to go from like, all right, I'll have breakfast, I'll eat lunch here, then I'll go to practice, then I'll eat dinner. It'll be like, okay, I have an 8 a.m. class and nothing to do the rest of the day.
Yeah, but also too, they don't, even as an athlete, they don't teach you about what foods are good for your body.
Right.
And I don't, like, obesity is a huge issue in this country.
Oh yeah.
Heart disease, like I was reading about these heart stats the other day, and I think it was like one person every 36 seconds dies from heart disease, and it's like, oh God, I can't remember the other numbers, but they're staggering, like they're scary. Like, I look at those numbers and I'm like, that's a pandemic.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, like 78% of people in ICUs right now are overweight from COVID. 78%.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's talking about like, you need to get the vaccine, you need to get vaccinated, which, I mean, that's fine to each its own. But at the same time, where's the health experts? Where's the doctors saying, all right, how about you don't have that cheeseburger? How about you don't eat that pizza? Why don't you go like make, a salad? Or why don't you like actually learn about your body or anything like that? Like, where's the knowledge in this country?
Yeah. And also teaching people too how to have a healthy relationship with food, because food's addictive.
Yeah.
Eating bad food is addictive.
Right.
And there's ways to make your bad food in a healthy way too, so you can still like appease your brain, but like there's such an emotional factor too. Like, when you eat that cheeseburger and you're thinking in your head, like, this feels so good right now.
Yeah.
This tastes so good. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
You do that, and it's like your brain, like, you remember that.
Right.
You create this memory and you tag this emotion to that cheeseburger. And then when you're feeling low, you want the damn cheeseburger because you know it's going to make you feel good for 5 seconds.
Right.
And I was a poster child of that. But like, nobody taught me how to eat well.
Right.
Even when I got diagnosed, no one told, like, I was like, okay, so what's the next steps? And they were like, just take this every morning on an empty stomach.
Like, no.
Which,
False.
that's not a medication. So like, that's the only medication I'm on. It's not even, it's a hormone, right? So like, I need it.
Right.
But I'm very like, I try to approach life, because I went through so many like quick fixes.
Right.
I now like approach life, I try to take a more holistic approach on like what's actually good for me, and I do the research. Like, no one told me not to eat gluten. So Hashimoto's is the second highest sensitivity / allergy to gluten behind celiac disease. I didn't know that until
Wow.
December of 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And it takes a month for it to be like like for you to completely not eat it, for it to like flush out of your system.
Really? Takes that long? Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. And gluten is in everything.
It is in everything. Like, literally everything.
Yeah. And that's like a recent lifestyle change. So I had a colleague who we were talking, and she had like a similar autoimmune disease. And we were at a business conference, and she's like, oh my God, then why are you eating that? You shouldn't be eating gluten. I was like, what? And also too, you hear that, and like, that is probably the hardest lifestyle change I've had to make through this whole journey.
Yeah.
Because also I found out in December, like around Christmas.
Yeah.
And
that's tough.
Yeah. And so I want to say, like, I don't know, I've probably been gluten-free for almost like close to 1.5 years now. And that has completely changed my entire life. Like, my energy levels, the way I eat, the way I look at food, the way I have to think, the way I now can or cannot eat out. And then just my whole body, like the way my body looks. So it makes me sad because, and I hate saying this because I don't want to come off of like bragging in any type of way, but 2020 was such a difficult and hard year for people. And so many people, especially a lot of people I know, put on a lot of weight because we were home.
COVID-19.
COVID-19. And people were stressed out. People lost their jobs, and people just, there was nothing else to do but to eat.
Yeah.
Right. Or to support your local business and like order food. Right. So like, that's what we all did. And it is the best shape of my life that I got in.
That's awesome.
Was that year. I not in pounds don't matter either. So like, let me preface this next statement with that. Like, the number on the scale like really doesn't matter, because if we were following like perfect charts for my height, I would be like 112 to 15 pounds, which no.
Right.
But I got down to like 120 pounds, which is like a 62 pound weight loss.
That's
like,
awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Like, you should brag about that, because you took the route. Like, you took the higher road. You put in the work. Like, you deserve to brag about that.
Thank you.
Like,
I forget
absolutely
sometimes. You forget. Like, now when I think, and maybe like you probably like understand this feeling too, but once you hit like a goal, you almost like forget that you hit it because you have the next goal already.
Yeah, you take it for granted.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a good thing because you want more. But at the same time, like that probably does so much for you for compared to the rest of society when you see all these people bitching and complaining about how they can't lose weight. And maybe there are people out there that have some sort of weight loss issues that like the doctors aren't helping them. But the thing is,
they
like,
don't understand.
You didn't give up and you put in the work to lose that weight and to look the way you are now. And you look great.
Thank
you.
You
look fantastic.
Thank you.
And
I'm all about like, it's not even about being like, I'm very like, I just want to be fit.
Yeah.
Like I want muscles. So like now I'm on this journey of like I love working out. I love like weightlifting and stuff. Right. So my journey now is like, all right, how much weight can I put up and like, is my form good? And so like, that's what I'm into. I want to be as strong as possible. I just think that like, if a zombie apocalypse did happen and like I fell in a ditch, can I like pick myself out of that ditch? You know, am I strong enough to do that? Yeah. So that's like where I want to be. But thank you. I think like I forget sometimes. And when I get into like a bad place, like Tyler is like such a good support of like reminding me sometimes, but sometimes I have to like remind myself, or even if I like have a memory from like 5 years ago pop up, I like don't recognize myself. I look at like my face is so different and it like hurts me to like see myself like that because I know how unhappy I was. And I'm sure there are people who are happy and are overweight, and like if you are happy, that's really all that matters. Like I'm all about like, I just want people to be healthy and happy. Right. But I like did not find any joy in life except for eating food. Yeah.
I think also the reason a lot of people forget about where they came from is because when they come from very traumatizing times like that, a lot of the times they black it out. Like, and it could be anything. It could be like getting out of a relationship. It could be weight loss. It could be some financial debt, anything. Like you're in such a bad place, like you black it out. That's like a real thing.
No, I did parts of it. Like when I tell you, like I had to really like, it was like emotional for me to try to dig through my memories to remember certain things to like think about to tell you, because I'm like, oh my God, like thinking about things people said to me, like I blacked it out. Like I was pretty single through a lot of that time. Like this 4-year relationship is probably the only serious relationship I've ever had in my life. But I remember like dating someone in that time who was definitely much older than me. And I was at a point, right, where like I was definitely in denial because it didn't fit in any of my clothes anymore. To the point where I was like in my jeans, like denim, like ripping holes, like in my thighs.
That's crazy.
Because I could not fit and I was forcing it. But I am by nature a very optimistic, positive person. So I was like, you're going to lose the weight, so why spend the money on the clothes? Because you're not going to look like this forever. Like my mind was almost so like the spectrum. Like I had such a bipolar mindset of like hating and also being like, no, you got this. Right. That's probably what pulled me through. But at that time, like I remember like he wouldn't go out with me unless I would change my pants. And I'm like,
crazy.
I don't.
That's abusive. That
and
help.
I'm like, I don't have anything else to wear. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
Like,
this is what you got.
Yeah. And like my thighs are big enough that they're going to rub and you're not going to see the holes anyways, but like they're there. And like, I went through, I really like, I didn't have a difficult life by any means, but I definitely had a lot of people who were very insensitive and were very mean and were very okay with making very insensitive comments like about my body weight. And like that's why like when I look at people, like I don't know, I try to understand too, like I always hope that they're happy. Right. Like when I see people who are overweight, because I know how much pain I was in. And like anyone who shames anyone, it just like disgusts me.
Right. I agree completely.
Because you like that very cliche line of like, you don't know what people are going through. Like you don't know how hard they could be trying to. Yeah. But I do think a lot of people, I think the majority of this country is very uneducated, like back to what we were saying before, like very uneducated on the healthy ways to go about things. And I'll say too, right, like a lot of people, like a lot of my Instagram followers, right, who I maybe have like personally have known from high school or whatever, they've literally have watched, right, like me go from all these different sizes. Right. And I've had so many people message me and reach out, how'd you do it? Can you help me? And that is like always been, I felt like since I was a kid, like my purpose, I just want to help people. So I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is my way to help. And a lot of people want like a magic answer. And I can't tell you how many girls have messaged me. And when I send them a paragraph 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs on like all the things like I really had to do. And it's not like an Herbalife shake. It's not, I don't want to like on any brands, but like there are a lot of brands that are like, take this fat burning pill every day for 30 days. And I did those things.
Yeah.
And they don't work. And people want that. They want the magic fix where they don't have to put in the work.
They want the Band-Aid.
And I have, yes. And I have people literally not answer me after. Of course, I have the people who like do the workouts and then they come back. They're like, oh my God, that was great. Or can you help me like with this or my macros or whatever? But there's so many people who like, I feel like then want nothing to do with me because I don't have a magic fix. Right. And like, it's been a 6-year journey.
Yeah. It is not quick.
No.
That's for sure.
And I'm sure I could have done it quicker, but like I went about it the healthiest way like I could. And you do have to do your research. And I was lucky that like Tyler is somebody who already had a lot of knowledge and he could shed that on me and I didn't have to put in too much work here and there, but like I did. And at the end of the day, I had to do it myself too.
Right. And it's like, it's crazy because so many people just don't want to put in that work and I don't understand why. Like some people will ask me sometimes about like stocks, like financial things. And I say to them, I'm like, I am willing to sit down with anyone. Doesn't matter who they are. And I will teach you literally everything I know. I'll put together like visuals, PowerPoint presentations, because I genuinely want you to succeed. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I almost never do it because I know, and I can tell very early on if I'm wasting my time or not. Yeah. Like it's one thing for me to go through it and see you like succeed. It's another thing for me to go through that entire thing and have you just say, thanks. Yeah. And just move on. And that's why, like, don't waste my time like that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And also, too, it's like emotional every time I do it, too. Yeah. Because, like, I'm tapping into, like, that part that, like, I kind of want to black out. Because it's not like I was happy during that time either.
Of course.
But now, of course, like, it does feel so good to, like, look back. Because you, like, forget you were that person. You, like, sometimes, like, at least for me, like, I forget that, like, oh, that was like I do have a story to tell. Right. I do have a journey. Like I did go through a struggle, like especially when you live with someone who's an addict and like went through really hard struggles and like things that like were very hard for me to watch and comprehend. Like I'm like, oh, I've had a very smooth ride. Like my life has been very good. But then I look and I'm like, no, but like I do have something and like I did go through like a really rough thing that a lot of people go through. Like a lot of people struggle with weight. Even people who are like, let's give the other spectrum, right? Who are really skinny. I grew up with a brother, which I think this probably like contributed to me being so depressed as a kid. But my brother was on the other end where he couldn't put weight on, right? He was like my mom and dad and all my cousins. He was so skinny. Yeah. And so I imagine being like an 8-year-old and you go in your pantry and it's all like the cosmic brownies, zebra cakes, Doritos, Oreos, all the good stuff a kid wants, right? And then my mom's like, no, that's for your brother. Yeah. You have all the Special K. And you're just like, how depressing, you know? He was on a high calorie diet, which again, that nutritionist like didn't recommend good high calorie food, right?
Clearly not.
No, because here my parents are buying all like the junk food, which he's still like, I mean, he has a great body now. It's like ridiculous. But I always like, I think that's what also, they didn't show me how to have fun with healthy food. Right. Like there's just so much, that's really the root of all of this was just like a lack of education. And yeah.
What were some of the other diets that you really tried that did not work out? I know you said you tried Herbalife. I know you said you were really like starving yourself. What else did you try? Did you try anything specific like keto or anything at all?
Yeah, I did this one thing. It's called like It Works. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
It sounds familiar, but I have no idea what it is.
I mean, I don't even care if you're watching this. Like, it's crap. Don't do it. But a lot of those like probably like pyramid schemey type of companies that have like those, it was a lot of those things like that's the only name that stands out to me. I can't remember some of the other names, but no, I didn't do like keto or paleo. Yeah, like I didn't do any of those things because that wasn't really like super huge back then. I tried to do like a lot of like smoothie, like juice things, like, and I really was always searching, right? Because I'm sure I was lazy too. I was always searching for like a magic pill that I could take every single day and not change any of my habits. And I did a lot of those, and I just like can't even imagine like the crap I put into my body, because I'm a label reader now. I've probably taken it to like a different extreme, but I'm very healthy with it. Like, because I went through my like journey too of like an unhealthy relationship with my scale, an unhealthy relationship with the food, and like being too obsessive, to now like it's just like it really is such a long journey and like lifestyle change. But like now I maybe go on a scale once a week, maybe. And I don't get upset with what I look at. It's really just for like progress with what the work I'm putting in at the gym. Because honestly, from last summer when I was like in the best shape of my life, I've put on 10 pounds since then. And I tell people, and they're like, you don't look any different, but it's all muscle, because now I'm doing like a whole different workout program. So like my goals are totally different. And that did test me this winter so we were still in COVID, and I'm getting on the scale now, and I'm like, oh shit, I gained weight. And so you do, like, when you're someone who's had all these struggles, you now have to like figure out a way to like not dip back into unhealthy patterns when you see things that are triggering.
Now, I feel like the problem with these meal replacements, these even like protein shakes, like mass gainers, like they are good. I do feel like they have their place because they are very convenient. If, you know, maybe you get up early in the morning to go to work and you just don't have time to make anything, which I don't blame you, because I really don't like to make anything in the morning either. I feel like there's way better ways I can spend my time in the morning. But the thing is, people treat that as a meal and they think that that is their meal, but you can get the same nutrients from real food. Like, and I think it's especially, it's one thing it's ironic because I think they're actually better when you're trying to gain weight, because then you can get those extra calories in. When you're trying to lose weight, you are essentially starving yourself, and you can do it at different levels. There's a healthy way to do it. But when you're eating below what your body maintains calorie wise, like you are essentially starving yourself in a way.
Whenever you're at a deficit.
Exactly. And you're obviously, like, your body, as you go lower and lower calorie wise, if you're doing it the right way, your maintenance is going to drop as well. So that's why people hit plateaus and you need to eat less. And then, oh my God, there's so much to that. I mean, people hit the plateaus and they're like, well, what now? And then they get so angry and they're like, oh, like I lost the 10, but I still have 15 more pounds to go, and like, what the hell? And they get frustrated and they give up. But honestly now, I mean, and this doesn't work for everybody. I mean, definitely what I do now would come off as a pain in the ass to some people. I don't even know if I can swear on your podcast, but I am. Go right ahead. Be yourself. Trust me.
But I count macros. And that is like, it's been the most revolutionary thing, I think, to me, because that's really when I saw like my body just like shed off the unnecessary fat. Like, we all have fat. I'm a woman, right? So like, I'm meant to have children one day, so I'm gonna have fat. But the unnecessary fat that was just like, it shouldn't have been there. That's where I saw like all the change happen. And it's a science, and like it's, you know, it's a pain to a lot of people. It's sometimes like, it's very discouraging to start. And when I start explaining it to people, like, you see like the sparkle in their eye disappear, because they're like, oh, you were giving me the key to success, and now that sounds like so much work and I don't want to do it. But really, I mean, I try to like I do sales for a living, so I really try to make it sound as easy as possible to people and sell them on it. But it's so life-changing, because the first couple days to a week might be a pain, like just getting used to it and getting comfortable. But once you know, like, you know what macros are in that banana and in that hamburger bun. And I have found that like I can eat what I want and enjoy life, but I know how much fat, protein, and carbs my body needs, and that changes all the time, like you said, when you're gaining and losing weight. But for me, that's what personally has worked for me now, like a steady workout routine, which I don't do the same workout all the time. Like, I'm constantly always changing that up depending on like where I'm at with my body. But in counting my macros, and like, I feel bad because a lot of people, like I said, they come to me and like, that's what I'm telling them. And they're like, you know, they wanted the magic pill. But, I mean, I I probably shouldn't now, but like I used to always tell people, like when they're messaging me, they're like, you look so great, like what are you doing? I'm like, I'll help you with your macros. I'll help you. But honestly, Christian Guzman has a video for counting your macros that's like from 3 years ago, and that's what I used to learn, and I just point people that way now. But also I know how to do people's macros, so I can, but I do it, I've been doing it for free out of the kindness of my heart to help people. And now I'm like, I should probably like capitalize on that and use it as like a business method. But that's really like the trick, because when you know how to count your macros, you're understanding like the value of what is in this food, right? So when you pick up that frozen meal, you see, oh my God, there's 30 grams of fat and only 6 grams of protein and like 80 grams of carbs. So that right there, I'm 10 grams of fat away from hitting my fat for the day.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think macros are so important, and like we can go into it more or not, but when you understand macros, you understand the value of what's in every type of food, like food. And when you do that, you can start making smart decisions on what you're putting in your body. And when you know what your specific macros are, you know what your body needs, and then your day-to-day gets easier because you know what to cook or what to pack. And for some people, like meal prepping is really great on a Sunday. Some people are like, I don't have the time for that. For me too, like I would strive to do meal prep, and like Tyler's good at it, but I'm like, like we'll make like one big loaded chicken on Monday and that'll get us through. Yeah. But I'm like, I don't really want to do all that work on a Sunday. But I grocery shop smart. Like I know what's easy and what I need and what things are high in this and low in this and good in that. And so my meals are like, I know how to make my meals, and I know what meals have what in them. It's
crazy because that never goes away. It seems like even me, like, you know, I have not been overly into fitness, like, you know, relatively healthy, like running, going to the gym, but I haven't tracked macros in a couple of years. But I always have like that calorie counter going in the back of my head, which is crazy to think about. And some people watching this might be like,
that's unhealthy.
Yeah, what does that even mean? But I'm always thinking, I'm like, all right, I've had this to eat today. Like, I'm going to have this to eat later. I shouldn't have this now. I shouldn't eat now. I should eat later because I want to eat this. Like, that's a little all over the place. But you get what I'm trying to say.
No, but that is actually healthy. And a lot of people too, like, right, there's going to be the people who are on the other end of the spectrum who are like, that's so unhealthy to be so obsessed with counting your calories. We're not counting calories, we're counting macros. That's totally freaking different. Like it really is, because it's the value of what's in let's just say an apple. And by you doing that, you know, like, okay, first of all, it allows you to like eat what you want. You can still get the cheeseburger from McDonald's. You just got to change the other things you're eating throughout the day. But it's smart because then you know, like, okay, like I had that protein shake and it had a lot of protein and fat, but I really haven't had any carbs. I need energy.
Right.
So like now, and like carbs aren't the enemy either. So that's why like I don't really know a lot about keto and paleo and all those things. So I don't really want to talk too much on them because I really don't know if they're good or bad. But when I've heard like different colleagues tell me about them, I always like kind of cringe sometimes because I'm like, I think one of them is like very low carb, and I'm like, but carbs are good for you.
Keto's like a no carb diet.
Yeah, and like that I'm sure works for some people, but it kind of scares me because with macros, once you know them, you're just giving your body all the nutrition that it specifically needs.
Right.
And you realize that like carbs are not your enemy, fat is not your enemy. You need those things. And there's also like healthy fats and healthy carbs too, right? Like you don't have to get your fat from cheese, like, or you know, whatever else. You can get it from nuts, which might not sound as fun, or like peanut butter. Like there's still great ways to like enjoy. Like I am such a foodie. I think there's always going to be a fat girl living inside me who's like tempting me with all the bad greasy things. I find my way to like curb those cravings in a good positive way, because I want pizza every damn day.
Yeah. I'm the same way. But now I think a lot of people are watching this are going to get a lot of value out of this. Why don't you give a brief breakdown of how to calculate someone's macros? Like, do your own, you could do.
Okay. So basically, so there's like a couple of things that you need. So you need how much you weigh, your body weight, which I was always told the most accurate way to get your body weight is like first thing in the morning after a bowel movement naked. So that's like the most accurate weight. So you get that body weight, and then based off of what I learned from Christian Guzman, he gives a number like 14, 15, 16, and what you pick one of those three numbers based off of how active you are. So 14, and you have to be very honest with yourself, because I always like
it's so easy
to be like, I'm more active than I
easy.
am.
I know
know
exactly what you mean. Yes.
Like when I first started them and Tyler was helping me, I was like, I'm really active. I work out every day. And he's like, you sit for a living for your job though. Like you're not on your feet. So like a 14 would be somebody who's like sedentary. Like you're sitting at a desk all day. Like maybe you get in like a run or this, but like that's really not that active, right? 15 I'd say is like very like more average. Like maybe you sit at I sit at a desk, but like I'm doing cardio usually, like some type of cardio, and I'm also like putting in time at the gym, and I'm working out like 5 days a week. I'd say probably like 4 to 5. 6 is like you're running every day. Like 16, you're super active. Like walking, you probably have a more walkable job too. You're on your feet all day.
Like a cook or something.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, Christian probably said this way better than I did, but we'll just go with that, right?
No, you're doing great.
But there's a little formula, and I'm not remembering it off the top of my head, but so basically I believe you take, I don't want to butcher this. I have it written down somewhere and I knew it off the top of my head. But you would take there's a little formula. It's so easy once you have it. I feel so bad. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But you take your weight and you take that and you times it. Okay, it's coming to me. You multiply your weight times that number, and then you get like this big number. And then I don't have all the...
And that's your calories for the day, right?
That's like the calories. But then from there, you break it down further to find out the grams for your protein. You figure out your protein and your fat, and then whatever's left over is your carb.
And your protein's just 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, or somewhere between 0.8 and 1 gram.
So that depends. So the way I've learned it is like I think it's like there's like a scale, and there's like 0.08 to 0.1 and like 0.1 something. So 0.08 is someone who's probably like not, like you're not super fit, like maybe you're just like starting your journey. You would calculate it with that number. Someone who like maybe like is fit, is like in better shape, would go with the 1 gram per pound. And then the higher number is someone like super shredded, you know? And this might not be making like a whole lot of sense, because like I said, once you get that calorie formula, now you break it down from there. So, and I'm missing a number. I think now from there,
it's kind of tough off the top of your head.
Yeah,
it is pretty hard.
I know. I'm sorry.
I
want to look at it because I'm seeing it in my head, and I want to look at it to like tell you what it is specifically. But
you want to go get it?
Yeah, I
Okay,
can
go
get it
ahead.
back.
Yeah.
Do you care?
No,
I'm sorry.
I don't care at all.
Are we back?
We're back.
Okay. So I'll just break it down for you, what it looks like when you're calculating your macros. I'm a visual person, so I'm sure this might sound kind of confusing to some people because they might want to just look at it. But really the way it goes is like I said. So you want to take your body weight, the most accurate body weight you have, and you multiply that by either 14, 15, or 16 based off of how active you are on a day-to-day. When you multiply that, you get your maintenance calories, right? So let's say you were 134 pounds. I did this for a friend. Extremely active, right? She's a 16. Like she's going on runs in like mile walks like every day. So her maintenance calories were 2,144.
Okay.
That's just to maintain her weight, right? That is, sometimes I do this for people and it scares them, the number, because they're like, oh, that's too much food. You don't realize until you start calculating how much food you can actually eat.
Right.
And for some people that I've done their macros for, they were under eating. And that's why they had gained weight, because they weren't eating enough. So they're storing all the fat.
Yeah.
Because their body's like, help, I'm starving. And they don't know it, right? So then they start eating their maintenance, and they're like, this is a lot of food, this is hard. And they might like puff up for a few days, but literally I've had friends who in 2 weeks like start dropping weight, and they're like, oh my God, you were right.
You're a scientist.
I'm like, I told you. But then from there, right, to break down because really with macros, you're just looking at your fat, protein, and carb intake in the form of grams. So then from there, the way we would figure it out is, again, we're going off like a scaled number. So for your protein, let's say like you take your weight, right? And I'm going to give a different number now and screw up what I just said, but we'll take my macros last summer, right? I was 121 pounds. I did times 14, the lowest activity level, because I was sitting all day. And even though I was still working out a few times a week, I'm sitting all day, right? So my maintenance calories were 1,694, right? So then to break it down from there, for my protein, you always start with your protein because, I don't know, you just do. But then you take your weight again, right? So 121, and there's that scale, like we said, right? So like the 0.081 or like 1.2, and that signifies grams per pound. So at this point, right, I had like a little 4-pack last summer. I was like pretty fit, so I would take in a gram of protein per pound that I weigh. So 121 times 1 is 121 grams of protein. Now you can do the math too. Like if you look up how many calories are in a gram, you can calculate how much your calories. I think it's like 4 calories. I could be wrong. I know 9 calories per gram of carbs, and then it's like 4 and 5.
It's actually 9 for a gram of fat and 4 for a carb and 4 for a protein.
There it is right there. Thank you for the check.
That's
I appreciate
why I'm here.
it. I don't have it all written out, but perfect. So 121 times 1 is 121 grams of protein, which is 484 calories. So that's accounting for 484 of my calories, right? And then for my fat, I did 121 times 0.35, and you get 42 grams of fat, which for some people who are like, you can also, I should say, you can change this based off like what you love, right? So like if you really love fat, you can change the other numbers around so you can get what you want. 42 grams of fat for me, I was like, that's great. that should be good. Sometimes it makes me sad because it's not as much as I'd like, but, and then that accounts for 378 of my calories. So then from there, you're just left with carbs, right? Because now I take the calories of my protein and the calories of my fat, and I have that, right? And I just subtract that from my overall maintenance calories. And then I'm left with the amount of calories I have for carbs. And then you could just do the reverse math on that, right? With the amount of calories to figure out how many grams I would have, which would be, how many calories did you say for carbs?
4.
Yeah. So it would be I was left with 832 calories for my carbs. So I'm pretty sure it's divided by 4, and I'd get 208 grams for my carbs. But that's maintenance, right? So that's just like some people, and if you're paying attention to what you eat, that's really important. So I always tell people, like, first start like just paying attention. Like maybe get an app. I use my Fitness Pal. And just start like logging your food. Like when you eat, my Fitness Pal is also amazing too because you can scan barcodes. So I literally just like scan.
That's very convenient.
Oh my God, yeah. And it saves it.
Yeah.
So like you don't have to keep scanning. Like it's just all saved right there. Every food you've ever scanned in or logged in, like it's there.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's just amazing once you start. And I just like start paying attention to what you're eating first, maybe for a week, and then let's figure out your maintenance, right? And now you can see, like, am I overeating, am I undereating, or am I eating like way too many carbs and no protein?
Yeah.
So then from there, you might just want to like eat your maintenance for a week, or you want to do it for a few weeks, and then you'll start seeing like, okay, how does my body react? So I always give it like a month or two because you need time for your body to adjust. Like, you're not going to lose the weight right away. But I've had friends who just ate their maintenance and in 2 weeks already had lost like a few pounds. Now, like a healthy weight loss too is like a pound a week. That's what people don't realize either, right? So like when I did Herbalife and I lost 18 pounds in a month, everyone was like, wow, you're a rock star. Like, look at you kicking ass. And it's like, that's bad.
That's the thing. Everyone wants to win the lottery. No one wants to grow their wealth like over time. Like everyone wants to just win the lottery and just get, the golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Yeah, they want that summer body, like, and they want to start putting in the work in April, May.
Yeah, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
That was a pretty good explanation. I know I kind of put you on the spot there.
Yeah,
but I think you
sorry.
did pretty well.
Did you see me? I'm like,
you're completely fine.
I don't do math.
You're completely fine. I'll actually link, if I can find Christian's video, I'll link it down below in the description. I know Brandon Campbell also has a really good video on this as well, but
yeah.
I will link something down in the description.
Yeah, and Christian, if you ever see this, like, you kind of talk a lot in the video, so you might just want to like scroll through a little bit to get to the macro part, but it's seriously like the best video. I love you, Christian. But that video is like so simple. Like, he explains it for dummies. Like, it's so simple. He writes out the formula on a whiteboard. I know it now. Like, even though I couldn't explain it very well, I know it all, like, off the back of my hand. So I know how to, like, I just know my macros now, right? So like, I'm right now, not that it matters, right? But I'm like 150 grams of carbs, 45 grams of fat, and 113 grams of protein. So when something's off or I want to change something, I start like lowering and upping, and like, because I know now, because I've been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah.
But if you're starting off and you don't really understand, you go to that, you watch that video, he literally lays it all out, and you just plug in your own numbers to his equation, and it's so simple.
Yeah, it's actually very easy to do. Like, I haven't tracked macros in a few years now, and I truly believe it's like 650 right now. By probably like 7:05, I could have my macros laid out. Like, I just, like, I've done it that much. It's something that really does not go away, and it's something that really doesn't change. Obviously, the numbers are going to change here and there, but the whole process is just the same, and it's really not that difficult.
No, and that's why I tell people, like, it's such good knowledge to have, because even though it's a pain the first few days or week or two to get adjusted to like constantly logging, because when you start, you do need to log to figure out what the meals are, but then you start knowing, like, okay, like for me, I have the same breakfast sandwich every morning because it's like, I make it, it's my favorite thing ever, but I know how much of what's in it. And like, even if I don't know like the exact numbers, right, like you said, you start knowing the value of what's in every type of meal, so you know, like, okay, like I had a little too many carbs there, maybe I need some more fat and protein here. Like, you know how to just like adjust your days, and it stays with you the rest of your life, and then you're just eating smart.
It's
and
definitely,
your body's happy.
It's definitely great knowledge to have. The thing which comes into play, and what I really think hurts people, is even if they have this knowledge, they might say, all right, I was really on track this week, I'm going to go off the rails this weekend, or I'm going to have a couple of drinks, and they just track like the 2 grams of carbs that Bud Light comes with, which obviously is not the case by any means at all. And I think that hurts a lot of people. Yeah,
you have to, it's a very, you have to be very self-aware.
Yeah.
Because if you lie to yourself, like, you're not hurting anybody but yourself, because you're just going to get frustrated when 2 months goes by and nothing's changed.
Right.
And like, listen, I'm not perfect. Like, it's taken me as long as it has, because I didn't want to admit things to myself either.
Right.
I wanted to think I was more active than I was, you know, and I wanted to think that I could have more of this or less of that. And then 5 months goes by and I'm like, damn it, nothing's changed, or like, I'm still this, or I'm still not there.
It's easy to do the easy things.
Yeah.
And that's what separates the good from the great.
Yes. I will say though too, with that, playing devil's advocate, don't deprive yourself either.
Right.
Because I think that was my biggest downfall for so long. Like, I always thought, like, now mind you, I don't like go out to eat and eat junk all the time. Like, we're pretty healthy people in this house.
Right.
But if I'm craving a pizza, I'm gonna get a pizza, right? And I should, but like, again, if you're counting your macros, like and you're really going for a goal, you really can't be like going off the rails every other day, because you're not going to get anywhere. But you can't not give into cravings. There's also healthy ways to do it too. But like, if I want that pizza and I'm like, all right, Friday night I'm getting that pizza, I'll just make sure that like I eat the other things I'm going to lack in that pizza the beginning part of the day, so I can have it.
Yeah.
But also too, I just think that like life is like, you still need to give yourself the things your body wants, because if you go too long depriving yourself, you're going to go off the deep end real hard.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to eat way too much and make yourself sick, and then like gain back the 5 pounds you just lost.
Right.
And then you're going to get frustrated.
Right.
So balance. That's life though. Like, it's just balance.
And that's the great thing that I love about macros, is you can still go out with your friends, you can still like eat these foods that you love, you can still have that like cheeseburger, you might have to sacrifice a little bit throughout the day, but you can still do these things, and you can still explore and have those adventures that you really want. And I know Christian's made a lot of videos about traveling and tracking macros. He just went away, I know, and he was still
Yeah, I
tracking
watched that video.
macros. But he's also very adamant about, all right, if you're not prepping for a show, like if you're in Australia and you're not going to be in Australia very often, like don't be afraid to go off a little bit, but make sure you can come back from it.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. 100%. And the
100%.
problem is when a lot of people quit, they quit hard, and that opens up the door for everything else, because no one cares if you track macros. Like no one cares if you eat 42 grams of fat or 70 grams of fat. No one cares. Like I'm not going to look at you any differently. Like these people probably aren't going to look at you any differently. No one's going to look at you differently. But for you, that opens up the door for you to quit on other things. Yeah. And that's the issue a lot of people have.
Yeah, and mentally too, right? Like when you're counting macros at first and you first start, like the days go by so long sometimes, right? Because
you're just staring at the clock. Can I eat again?
Yeah, you're like, when can I eat again? Or also too, like sometimes it's like you're eating a lot, and then, but whatever the case may be, let's say you have just like 6 perfect days, and you're like, oh, I did so perfect, and then you go off the hinges for the next 3 days, but you're like you feel that guilt inside. You feel crappy because first of all, your body is, when you're like religiously eating well, like all the time, you feel the consequences of eating something crappy. Like I feel like if I don't know, I physically feel it where I'm like, is this meal going to be worth how I'm going to feel for the next 2 or 3 days? Like, because I feel like I keep a clean vessel. So if I eat something bad, it's like, it affects me. But also too, it's a mental game. Like anybody knows that who's putting in the work in the gym or just doing any type of at-home workouts or eating healthy. Once you start screwing up and then you let it go, if you do it once and you can hop back, like you said, you're good and you feel good because it's self-control. But if you just like lose it, that messes with you, because then it's going to be so hard to start again, because in the back of your mind, you're like, am I going to stop? Like I'm going to quit again. I know I'm going to quit again because I've quit.
And it's like this with everything. Like I've seen, and I've done this too. I'm definitely not, the end all be all. Like I've done this myself. Like I've seen people, like they're really ambitious about, maybe they're starting a podcast or a YouTube channel, or they're going down some journey and they're really gung ho about it. And then they're like, all right, I'm not going to do it this day. I'm busy. Then that turns into 2 days, then 3. And then before you know it, it's like done. Yeah.
Excuses are so easy to find. I'm having that right now with like just starting up like my path of trying to be an entrepreneur and get things going, right? Like I've been doing it for 2-3 years because it's so easy to say like, oh, but that's so hard to talk about that stuff because I'm going to be so vulnerable, and then it's out there, and like I archived all of the pictures of me 60 pounds ago on Instagram because I just like didn't want to tap into my past. I'm like, I'm in my present. Like I'm in the now, and like I worked hard for this now. I don't want to go backwards. And so it's so easy to make those excuses to not start. And it really is just like if, and I don't want to say if you love yourself, but like if you really want it, right? Like you are tired of feeling this way, or you want whatever goal it is, whether it's like food or fitness or anything. You can't give up on yourself, because like you said, no one else cares. No one gives a shit. Everyone is literally the main character in their story, and they don't really care unless they like love you with their whole heart and you're like the center of their world. No one really cares. So it's you who has to stay accountable, and like when you put in that work, like the time is going to go by no matter what. Like 3 years is going to pass like nothing, or even let's just say 6 months. And if you made those excuses for 6 months, you're going to be like I have been like, oh, what could I have gotten done in those last couple of years? Like, what could I have gotten done?
I had a coach that said to me once, he said, you're going to do this workout either way. You're going to be tired regardless. Like you're going to be exhausted. He's like, why don't you just give it everything and say you gave it everything as opposed to half it? And that's kind of always stuck with me. And I'm like that. Why should I do this if I'm not going to give it my everything? Like, what is the reason? Because then you're just wasting time.
You're in energy.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about entrepreneurship, because you said you were interested in that. So what interests you about it exactly?
I think what's always interested me about it is the opportunity to be in full control of my life. Be flexible, have my own schedule. And I think mostly because of my goals with entrepreneurship is to help people. So and to feel like fulfilled, like I love my job. I have a great job, but there's a part of me that like doesn't feel fulfilled. And I know it's because there's other things I want to do that I've been like putting off. But what interests me is the fact that it's the flexibility you have,
right,
being your own boss and really just having complete control of your own life and being able to inspire and help other people.
And how exactly do you want to do that?
I've been dabbling back and forth, but so I've always had a dream of writing a book. I've always loved to write. That's always been like my thing. I got a degree in English creative writing, and I got my first taste at like writing a book. I wrote a chapbook of poetry. A chapbook essentially is just like half a book worth. And it's published at Rhode Island College. And that was like one of the best experiences I've had in my entire life, because I've said it since I was a kid, and my mom's always said it. And I don't know, I love writing. It's like the one talent I've always had, you know, like some people don't have anything, or you work for stuff. Like I always had to work at being an athlete. I didn't have to work at being like a great writer. I just felt like I had it.
You just had it.
Yeah. And that's always been like my little special thing. So I've always wanted to write, and I've done different things with writing. I wrote for The Odyssey, which is like this online national blog.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I did bi-weekly articles on just like all different things for like college students.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
I wrote
awesome.
through Rhode Island College. Yeah. And then I got a creative writing degree, and poetry was really my thing. So like I have a bunch of poetry. Like I said, I have that book. And then also now I work for a travel company, and I just started a partnership with Shop and RI. It's a local magazine. And my company, I started the partnership, but we just took over their travel page. And so I write the articles for them for that. It's under my company's name, but I write the articles. So like I still write, like I still dabble in writing, but I don't know, I'd love to write. But I've dabbled back and forth with doing like a podcast or YouTube. I really love both. I listen to podcasts while I work out every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I'm in the car, I think it's because I love talking. Like if it was an Olympic sport, I seriously think I could go places with it, because once you get me started, I don't stop. And so I love the opportunity to like shut up and listen to other people.
Right.
And it's just so easy. Like we're always on the go in the car, like doing things. So like just having an AirPod in and like getting extra information I wouldn't have gotten.
Right.
So I love podcasts, but I love YouTube because I love the visual part of YouTube.
I love all of those ideas. I love the idea of a YouTube channel because you're going to really feel uncomfortable making videos. Like I've said this many times, like if you go back and look at the first video on my channel, it is like pitiful.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like awful. Like I am definitely very awkward. The quality's terrible, like complete potato camera. Like it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself.
Start somewhere.
Yeah, I grew a lot. I became very, very comfortable with uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, it makes you grow.
Yes.
That's why people don't want to start stuff, because it's scary and it's uncomfortable. But then once you do, it's a new stepping stone. Like you're like, I just grew a little bit.
The podcast, that's pushed me to levels I did not think was possible.
Cool.
Like it's had me reach out to these people who I can't even remember some of the last time I've talked to them. Like
Tyler.
I've talked to Tyler here and there.
Okay.
But like, I mean like people where it's like, I see them in a store and I would just like walk by and wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Like I have learned so much from starting a podcast. It really helped with your social skills because, we've had this conversation for, an hour and a half right now, and we really hadn't talked too much before.
No, this is the longest we've ever talked.
Yeah, and, it's not like awkward. Like I feel like we could sit here for another hour or two and just keep going. Like
Yeah.
I feel very comfortable. I don't know. I've learned so much from starting this podcast. I love that idea. I think
That's really beautiful, though. I don't want to interrupt you, but I that gets me excited because that's what I'm passionate about. Is just like, it's just connection.
Right.
I mean, we weren't like you and I, right? We weren't born into like a raccoon's body. We were born into a human being's body.
Yeah.
Right. And that is what drives human beings. We're social creatures. We crave community and connection. And you have that opportunity to connect with people who you would have never connected with and learn things you wouldn't have learned. And I think that is probably the only advantage of technology and the social platforms, is the opportunity to connect with people.
Right.
And like, I want that so bad. And I think I haven't started because it's scary.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to be vulnerable. And I know the thing I would start with is my story. And I'm like, oh, I'm so scared. But I think that's why this is so great that we're doing this, because I already feel inspired to just start.
Do it.
Yeah. I've had those thoughts though lately where I'm like, oh my God. Because I thought about this before Tyler ever even talked about it. I used to always talk about it. I'm like, first of all, I already know. Like, I know I'm going to write a book before I die. I know I'm going to be a published writer. It's who I am. It has to happen. But I always used to think like, I should start YouTube. And then when podcasting became kind of big the last couple of years, I was like, oh, I should do that because I like to I've always wanted to help people. I wanted to be a nurse when I was a kid and a doctor because I thought that's how I could help. And then couldn't get through the schooling for it. And then I was like, all right, psychology. And I have a psych degree too. I'm like, that's how I'm going to help people.
Right.
And then I was like, wait, no, my writing can. And now I'm like, no, wait, like it can, but my story can help people. And YouTube and just podcasting in general, I want to start because I want to help people. And I think back like, oh, if I started years ago, where would I be right now? Like, who knows? Would I even be in a 9-to-5? Like,
exactly.
Who knows? And like, then it brings out like the sad thoughts and you get so down on yourself. So you have to check yourself. And now I'm like, okay, I think everything happens for a reason. And I think that if I started then, I don't even know how well I would have done. And maybe I would have got discouraged.
Right.
Now I have like 2 YouTubers that I know who I can like get all these skills from and start now and have people. I have resources for help, which is cool. But yeah, I said to Tyler, and I'll say to you, I think it's so courageous. Like, you guys have a courage I haven't had yet, because it's scary to start something new and put yourself out there.
It's not normal to sit and talk in front of a camera for however long. It's not normal. Like, I'm very open about that. Like, that is not normal to record everything you do in a day.
Yeah.
But you grow so much. Like, I can honestly say I would not be taking this trip to Texas if I did not start this podcast. Like, I think
that's awesome.
I still think I would go on vacation by myself because I've always been really independent. I've always been one to, like, you know, I'll go out to eat alone. Like, if there's a restaurant I want to go to, or if like there's a movie I'll go see by myself. That's never bothered me.
Well, that's also like a great skill. A lot of people can't do that.
I think that's very powerful, and I push people to do that. Like, at least try it. Like, and it can be something simple, like to start. Like, go to Chick-fil-A and have a sandwich by yourself. Like, start small and then build up from there. Yeah. And then you'll be taking a flight to Texas by yourself.
No, but that, seriously, just sidebar, like, that is honestly awesome, because I think that is a huge problem today, is that with this generation of like social media, people don't know how to be alone, and people don't want to be alone because it's scary. But at the end of the day, like, we really only have ourselves and like what's in here. So like, you have to be okay with being alone. And the fact that you can do that is, like you said, it's so powerful. Like, the first time I did that, I went to the beach by myself, which felt so like kind of like scary to do.
Feels weird at first.
Yeah, it's weird. And then you're sitting there, right? And you have like all the high schoolers, college kids who are like sitting there with their friends having fun, and you're just like, I'm just watching, I'm alone. But then you just become so at peace, and like you're so present, and you like take in things. And I like made sure like no phone, and I have a book, and I don't know, it's when you get comfortable being alone and doing stuff like that, like, it opens
a lot of doors.
Because you can do
literally anything. And I think I really like the idea for you of starting a blog. And I'm comparing you a lot to Ariana right now, because she loves to write. She talked about this on the episode we recorded earlier or last week.
Oh, that's so funny.
She loves to write. She's always been a writer. She's always been a reader. I love the idea of you starting a blog.
Yeah.
And I gave this idea to Ariana, and I don't know if she's going to do it. She seemed to really like the idea. But I told her, I'm like, because she's been doing it for a couple years now.
Okay.
I told her, I'm like, you should take all of your blog posts and put them in a book.
Dude, have you read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
I have.
By Mark Manson, I think.
I have.
Okay, he was a blogger.
Yeah?
Yeah, and he turned that into that book.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's something you would excel on.
Yeah, thank you.
I also like the idea of a podcast for you, because you do love to talk, and honestly, and this is down the road once you grow your following a little bit, I really
yeah.
like the idea of a life coach for you.
Yeah.
Because I think you can help people.
You think?
I love it because you can help people with fitness, you can help people with mental health, and you can say, look, I started here. I had this problem, and people kept telling me no, and people were not helping me, and I still found a way. It took a long time, but I found it, and you can too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I've always wanted that. I just like helping people, and I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had, and that I had so many people tell me I couldn't do things, or I was this or I was that, because it's given me experience to help people and like help people feel good with themselves. I don't know. I think that because I have like teetered with, like, I've done other, like, I've written for other blogs, right? Like I'm writing for other people's platforms, but I've always thought, like, should I start my own blog?
Yes,
so that's great. I think I'd like to do, like, if I can acquire the YouTube skills, because the editing scares me. I give you guys so much credit. But I think I'd like to have like a YouTube and a blog, and like that's like the ultimate goal. Yeah. Because I mean, I just want to walk into a Barnes and Noble and see my book on the shelf like that. Even like I was writing poetry, I still do, and my mom's like, "Why don't you write a fiction book?" Because she was like,
"That's funny."
Poetry, it's not like my mentors in college. They were like, "Yeah, like I mean, it's." You do poetry for you, not for the paycheck.
Right,
like it's for you. And I'm like, I just loved it so much. I was always like, well, I'm only doing poetry, so I'm not ever gonna make money.
Yeah.
But I think that if I could have multiple things, like a blog and a YouTube, I could pursue
I love that idea.
Like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna start a blog eventually.
Yeah.
And I want to write a book too.
Yeah.
The book's way down the line, but the blog probably in the next couple of years. Like that's a lot closer.
Yeah, I gotta just do it. You know, I took that break after college of just not really writing because I felt like I deserved it. I felt like I deserved time off from reading and writing for a bit. And I've always, like I said, I've been a writer and I've been a chronic reader. So it was nice, but then I got into the business world and that break just kept going, and it's been going for the last couple of years where I'm reading again, but the writing's been like here and there. Like I journal, or like on occasion I write poetry when like something comes to me, because I do have a firm belief that like ideas are kind of like magic, and like I feel like this is crazy, but I feel like ideas are their own thing. They're their own entity.
Right. And
they will find the host to whoever will make them come to life. And I've literally, like, have you ever had an idea and then like you don't capitalize on it, and then
oh my god, all the time
it's on TV and you're like, I freaking thought of that years ago. Yeah, because and this is actually in a book I read. It's by the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. I have it over there on the bookshelf, but she talks about that, about these ideas being their own entity, and if you don't capitalize on an idea, it will disappear. You will lose it eventually. Some have longer timelines than others, and they will go find their next host to make it come to life. And when I have those ideas, like when they pop in, like they start knocking so loud sometimes, so I have to get it out.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I'm like, it's gonna go to someone else. And so I have written, because I luckily am still like, I feel blessed that I still get those ideas. But I think going into the business world, like out of college, I went into sales, and I've been in sales for a few years now.
Right.
So I've gotten so deep, because originally I thought, well, I can't pursue my dreams right now, because my dream always was like, I wasn't settling. I was going for a writing career. Like that was it. But then I realized, okay, there's nothing available right now, because I got out of college and I got that hard smack across the face that like, you don't just get the job you want with a degree. Yeah. Which is like a sick reality. But then I had, I got very sucked into like the business world and sales, and I was really naturally good at it. Like I'm really good at sales, and I don't really have to try. I don't like necessarily love it all the time. Like I do love what I do right now, because my industry, like I love my industry. Right. But I think I've gotten so sucked into it that I really just like stomped on all my dreams and kind of like didn't forget about them, but just didn't feel like they were attainable, because I had to make a living and I had to pay my bills. And then now more recently, like living with someone who's actively pursuing their dreams while working the 9 to 5, I was like, I really gave up on myself. Shit. And that's been a hard thing to process lately. So now I'm like, okay, I just got to start writing 15 minutes a day again and just get back into that. So now like I've been on a little roll of like writing again. And I don't know, I just got to start. And I think after this, I really am going to start. I would like to just start with a YouTube video because I just have so many people who've reached out to me over Instagram about just like helping them.
Yeah.
And I think if I put my story out there, I think a lot more people than I even realize would relate to that.
I think a lot of people would. I think you would help a lot of people. I don't even think you realize the audience that you could touch.
Thank you. That
because it's not just fitness, it's mental health, which over the last couple of years, a lot of people have really struggled with.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really going to be tough for you, and no one tells you this when you sign up for this occupation, is you're going to have days where you really question yourself. You're going to have days, is it worth writing this blog post? Is it worth sitting here recording this podcast?
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of hard days. And a lot of days you're going to ask yourself if it's worth it. You have to remind yourself that this isn't easy.
Yeah.
If it was easy, everyone would be talking in front of a
Doing it.
camera. Everyone would be doing it. But it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
That's what you got to remind yourself.
See, and I feel like a hypocrite because I give Tyler these speeches all the time when he like has his low moments. And I'm like, he's like, what? But like, why aren't other people doing this? I'm like, because it's not easy. And
It's
like, here I
not
am,
easy.
and I'm like, not doing it.
It's much easier said than done. It's much easier.
It's easier to be his cheerleader sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Because like I'm watching him do it and I'm like, yeah. But then the other day I told him, I'm like, you're doing all the things that I said I was going to do. But it's so much more comfortable to sit here and cheer you on than to do it because it's so scary. But now I just feel fired up, like competitive almost. Like, okay, I can't let you take all of the spotlight.
Yeah,
I got to
right.
step it up because those are things I want too.
Yeah.
And you are doing them. And if you can do it, I can do it.
Like, everything is figure outable. Everyone can achieve their dream, but unfortunately, in society, not everyone does that.
But like you're saying, it's the consistency. Even when you feel like, why am I doing this? It's being consistent and just like constantly doing it because it's going to amount to something.
Right. And it's crazy because so many people give up, and they give up at a time where they were probably really close to a major breakthrough, and that probably limits them and holds them back more than they know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for
I
having
really,
me.
really enjoyed this. You have a very incredible story. I'm very happy you were able to come on. I want you to come back on.
I would love to.
I've never asked anyone on the spot before to come back on, ever.
Me.
Not even the great Nick Wright. I want you to come back on, but I want you to start your blog, your
That's
podcast.
fair.
I want you to start that first. I want you to get a little bit into it, and then I want you to come back on, and I want you to talk about some of the struggles that you've had.
Absolutely. I would be honored. And also, thank you for having a platform for me to talk about that, because I know it might be different for some of your listeners to hear a topic like that, but even if it just helps one person, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that, because you're now part of my story. Like, that's the first time I've ever talked about that. So thank you for getting me out of my comfort zone.
Of course. You have a great story. You're a great person. I'm so proud of you and everything that you've accomplished. And guys, like, comment, subscribe as always, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.